The sun had set on what was any ordinary day, but just before 8 p.m., officers were urgently dispatched to Sanctuary Boulevard after receiving multiple reports of a shooting. As police arrived at the scene, a black Volkswagen SUV was idling in the middle of a dimly lit street, its hazard lights illuminating the roadway where a damaged tire was observed, located in front of the vehicle. A man was found lying on the ground in a pool of his own blood, unresponsive. 2 gunshot wounds were found to the shoulder of the victim, while other spent rounds were found lodged in his vehicle. First responders administered CPR, but when their efforts were unsuccessful, the man was pronounced dead at the scene. Officers spoke to neighbors and bystanders in the area in hopes they saw what happened and perhaps who was responsible. But it was an unexpected witness who saw the horrific events unfold. A toddler was located in the back seat of the SUV, secured in a car seat when the shooting occurred. After running the plates on the vehicle, the victim was identified as 33-year-old Jared Bridegan, and the child, his 2-year-old daughter Bexley, who watched helplessly as her father was gunned down in front of her very eyes. Officers noted that Jared's wallet, wedding ring, Apple Watch, and other valuables went untouched, leading investigators to believe that this was a planned and targeted attack. Jared Bridegan was born in Warrensburg, Missouri on June 29, 1988. As a young child, the Bridegan family relocated to Jacksonville, Florida. After high school, Jared studied at Utah Valley University and graduated with a bachelor's degree in digital media. Jared had a longtime interest in videography and was an accomplished user experience designer. Ultimately, Jared moved his way up to the senior design manager position at Microsoft. And while he took pride in his career, his greatest role was that of a loving and supportive husband to his wife Kirsten and devoted father to his 4 children. Jared first met Kirsten in 2017 after the two connected on a dating site. Although Jared had 4-year-old twins from a previous marriage, Kirsten welcomed his children with open arms, treating them as if they were her own. With shared values, faith in the LDS Church, and immediate attraction to one another, the two fell in love quickly and married in October of 2017. And soon, the happy couple would complete their family when they welcomed 2 daughters of their own. Life was incredible for the Bridigans. True love and friendship were displayed between Kirsten and Jared, and the love and devotion they had for their children was profound. They often spent time outdoors, riding bikes, going to the beach, or working on a project together. And rainy days would be spent inside doing arts and crafts, playing board games, baking goodies, or reading books. Jared took his role as a father and husband very seriously, encouraging a home of joy and togetherness through acts of service, always leading by example. Kirsten described Jared as being a fantastic father and having the kindest soul. And when Jared was murdered, their world was shattered into a million pieces as they were left with heartache and confusion as to who would want to kill such an incredible man. On the fateful night of Wednesday, February 16, 2022, Jared was out on a date night with his then 9-year-old twins and his 2-year-old daughter, while Kirsten stayed at home with their 6-month-old baby. At this point in time, Jared and his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner, the mother of the twins, had split custody, alternating on Wednesdays. After dinner and dessert, as scheduled, Jared dropped the twins off at their mother's around 7:45 p.m., just before heading home. But when Jared didn't come home at the expected time, worry sank in, leading Kirsten to call his cell phone several times, only to reach his voicemail. Until finally, a call was answered, but the voice on the other end was not Jared's. The stranger identified himself as a police officer, telling Kirsten that her daughter was okay, but she needed to come down to the police station. Kirsten rushed to the station only to find out that her worst nightmare had come true. Jared was driving his normal route on Sanctuary Boulevard when he came across a tire lying in the middle of the road. As he stepped outside of the vehicle to move the tire, Jared was unexpectedly ambushed and gunned down in front of their 2-year-old daughter Bexley, who sat fearful and helpless in the back seat. In an unprompted statement, Bexley told an officer, "Daddy opened the car door and I heard a boom." Days later, an interview was conducted with Bexley when she stated she did not hear anyone arguing with her father, but did see someone who appeared to have a green hat, pink or red skin, in Halloween-like clothing approach the car and then run away. As Bexley described, Daddy was sick and laying on the ground. Evidence gathered at the scene consisted of 4 10mm shell casings and the tire planted in the street. The location of the shooting and placement of the tire led officers to believe that this point of attack was planned and perhaps rehearsed, as the road was dark and isolated, void of cameras, and narrow, making it difficult to drive around the tire. Police then surveyed the neighborhood looking for any eyewitnesses in camera footage. While the direct area of the crime was not captured, neighbors and local businesses provided nearby surveillance to police. Just prior to the shooting, timestamps of the videos showed cars driving towards and leaving the area without disruption, providing evidence that the tire had been intentionally placed there at the time that Jared would be passing, suggesting that whoever was responsible must have known Jared's routine and the specific route he would take to get home. Behind the scenes, police were interviewing those who were close or associated with Jared Bridegan. Just like any murder investigation, police first looked into Jared's spouse, Kirsten. During her interview, Kirsten was obviously shocked and distraught over the murder of her beloved husband and father of her children, and beyond devastated that her young child was there to witness the brutal attack. Kirsten fully cooperated with the investigation. She willingly allowed police to search her phone and consented to the search of Jared's property. Text messages revealed that Kirsten asked Jared how date night with the kids was going, and he responded things were going well. After Jared dropped the twins off with their mother, he called Kirsten when she was on the phone with her brother. Kirsten then merged the calls, and the 3 of them talked for a few minutes when Jared said he was on his way home. It was only when he didn't arrive at the expected time that Kirsten got worried and began calling his phone. A subpoena was submitted for Kirsten, but after investigators went through her phone, computers, and financial records, nothing indicated that Kirsten was involved in the murder. During her interviews, Kirsten was in disbelief, telling investigators she couldn't imagine who would want to hurt him, saying that he was a loyal friend and a fantastic husband and father. She further explained that Jared didn't have enemies. However, she did mention that the relationship between Jared and his ex-wife Shanna was not a good one. According to Kirsten, Shanna was constantly filing things in court regarding the children and would often lie about Jared, attempting to portray him as a bad father. Police then brought in Shanna Gardner and her husband Mario Fernandez for questioning, who were both cooperative. Shanna Gardner was forthcoming with the bitter details of her divorce from Jared Bridegan. Although the couple finalized their divorce in 2015, eventually moving on with their new partners, the contention had only exacerbated as they fought over custody and child-rearing practices with the twins. The vitriol between Shanna and Jared was apparent as the two would not communicate in person, but only in emails and text messages to document the interactions. Divorce proceedings and custody hearings documented over 300 motions and filings detailing the venomous relationship between the two households. Despite the contention, Shanna and Mario denied any involvement of Jared's murder, providing their alibis on the night in question. Shanna stated she was in the kitchen cooking her dinner while Mario had a migraine, so he was sleeping on the couch when Jared dropped the twins off at home. Shanna suggested that Jared's murder may have been the result of a drug deal gone bad, a gang initiation, or perhaps Jared's wife Kirsten was involved. Police brought in several other witnesses, both friends and family of Jared and Kirsten, and those of Shanna and Mario's. As can be expected, those on Jared and Kirsten's side echoed their sentiments, pointing blame at Shanna, and those on Shanna and Mario's side shared their respective positions, believing Jared was the instigator of the acrimonious relationship. While evidence had not yet uncovered an official suspect, the court of public opinion quickly pointed the finger at Shanna, believing she was behind the murder. Suspicion escalated when Shanna, as well as the twins, weren't in attendance at Jared's funeral. Kirsten had been outspoken that the twins were isolated from Jared's family and their half-siblings since his death.
Our hearts and minds. I've been with Liam and Abby since the day of Jared's murder, but especially now. For the past year and a half, Liam and Abby have been isolated and kept away from us while they lived with their mother, their stepdad, and their maternal grandparents. Despite my constant requests to see or speak to them, I have been denied and continuously ignored. So I will take this opportunity to do it again. I plead with the Gardners to put the emotional and mental well-being of Liam Abby above all else and allow them to reconnect with us. We are their family. We love them. We have prayed for them every single day for the last 547 days since they were ripped away and isolated from us. The kids deserve all the love and support possible as we work through this next chapter. Please do not continue to add to their pain. Let our children be siblings again and put them first and do what's right. Thank you.
After months of public scrutiny and quote-unquote sensationalistic media coverage, Shanna Gardner decided to give a single interview to express her side of things.
I do want people to understand, where I'm coming from.
Almost 5 months after Jared Bridegan was murdered in the street in front of his 2-year-old daughter, we spoke with his ex-wife, who has not commented publicly so far. Our first question: why have you stayed silent?
I was asked to not talk to the media or give a public statement, but with the level of speculation, I felt that now it was necessary to speak out.
Shanna Gardner revealed she was asked by Jared Bridegan's widow, Kirsten, not to speak publicly, but we wanted to know how the relationship could have gotten to that point.
I'm sure you would say that we've had happy moments. I mean, we shared the 2 most beautiful children in the world.
In 2015, Jared and Shanna divorced. Their court records, which we obtained from the St. Johns County court system, revealed a long, complicated process lasting over 5 years.
Anytime divorce comes into any situation, it's messy. It just is. I will say that I think that we both love our kids.
Later, in a blog post, Shanna's mother said she was not invited to the funeral. I asked Shanna about the situation.
His family did not invite me or want me there.
But the day before a vigil hosted by Jared's widow at Celebration Park, Shanna was photographed at the park with her kids by the tabloid Daily Mail.
Talk about a violation of privacy, because my kids know that they were photographed and they were worried.
The tabloid presented the facts in a way that leave room for speculation about Shanna having a role in Jared's death, citing their rocky divorce papers and her absence from the funeral.
Even though we didn't always get along, he was still the father of my kids.
So I asked Shanna the question.
Did you have anything to do with Jared's murder?
No, I did not have anything to do with his murder.
Do you have any idea who might have done this?
I do not have any idea. As I said, we've been divorced. We don't run in the same social circles. All I know is that I would never want anybody to go through this.
She told me if she could speak to Jared again, she'd say one thing.
Honestly, that I wish it weren't like this. I wish things could have been and could be different.
Weeks after the shooting, a potential lead was announced. Police reached out to the public for help in locating a vehicle of interest in connection to the murder of Jared Bridegan.
Police are now looking for the dark blue Ford F-150 pickup truck in this video linked to the shooting death of Jared Bridegan. Jacksonville Beach Police are sharing pictures and that video of the truck that they've linked to the murder of Bridegan last month.
Wednesday, the Jacksonville Beach Police released these videos of a blue Ford F-150 truck with silver running boards and brown trim and called it a vehicle of interest.
Additionally, the tire found at the crime scene was thought to belong to a Ford F-150, matching the vehicle they were looking for. Locating this vehicle would prove to be instrumental in finding their suspect.
For almost a year, we have investigated this case, seeking the many questions surrounding Jared's murder, and most importantly, to answer the question, who killed Jared? Just under an hour ago, this man, Henry Tenen, was arrested for the following crimes: conspiracy to commit murder, second degree murder with a weapon, accessory after the fact to a capital felony, and child abuse, all directly related to the murder of Jared.
Today, we have decided to share limited information about the state's evidence against Henry Tenen. Conspiracy to commit murder. We know Henry Tenen did not act alone.
Now, while the arrest of Henry Tenen brought some relief to Bridegan's family, many questions went unanswered. As Tenen had no apparent connection with Jared Bridegan, why would he have committed this atrocious crime, and who else could be involved? To protect the integrity of the investigation, the probable cause affidavit was sealed for 30 days, leaving many details in the dark. Later, it was determined that Tenen was implicated in the crime by phone, bank, and vehicle records. Evidence showed that the F-150 was in fact registered to Henry Tenen. The tire left in the road to block Bridegan matched his vehicle, and phone data location put him in the area at the same time the shooting occurred. 62-year-old Henry Tenen faced 4 charges: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit a capital felony, and child abuse. The child abuse charge was in relation to the shooting occurring while 2-year-old Bexley was in the back seat in close proximity. If found guilty, Tenen would likely face the death penalty. Initially, Henry Tenen pleaded not guilty and denied any involvement in the murder of Jared Bridegan. But as the evidence stacked against him, Tenen decided to take a plea deal offered by the state. As they had indicated, they knew Tenen did not act alone. And in order to convict his co-conspirators, Tenen's cooperation was crucial. By agreeing to plead guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder of Jared Bridegan, the remaining 3 charges would be dropped, and the defendant would be sentenced to a minimum of 15 years in prison. But as a part of his plea agreement, Henry Tenen would have to agree to testify against any co-defendants. With this deal on the table, Henry Tenen admitted to being the gunman behind the murder. Although there was no direct connection between the victim and his killer, the investigation revealed a single link between Jared Bridegan and Henry Tenen. According to court documents, Henry Tenen was the tenant in a home owned by none other than Mario Fernandez. The two had known each other for 4 years prior to Bridegan's murder. Phone records showed the two in frequent communication within the weeks leading up to the murder. On the evening prior and the morning of the shooting, Mario's phone pinged at Tennant's property. Additionally, bank records uncovered evidence of payment from Fernandez to Tennant in the form of 3 handwritten checks. Tennant admitted to investigators that the payments, under the guise of a business dealing, were in fact payment for the murder of Jared Bridegan. Additional payments were transferred to Henry Tennant, amounting to a total of $150,000. On the day Henry Tennant pleaded guilty to the court, authorities announced the arrest of 34-year-old Mario Fernandez Saldana, the now estranged husband of Shanna Gardner.
This morning, Henry Tennant pled guilty to murdering Jared Bridegan. Specifically, Tennant entered a plea of guilty to second-degree murder with a weapon. Our investigation has revealed a single link between Jared Bridegan and Henry Tennant. That is Mario Fernandez Saldana. As part of Tennant's plea agreement with the state of Florida, he has agreed to testify truthfully against those he worked with to murder Jared Bridegan. As I said at our last update on this matter, we know Henry Tennant did not act alone. And Tennant has confirmed this to be true. Tennant's cooperation has both corroborated evidence collected during the investigation and provided additional evidence against Mario Fernandez Saldana for his role in the planning and execution of Jared's murder. Mario Fernandez Saldana is the husband of Jared Bridegan's ex-wife, Shanna Gardner. Immediately after Tennant's court appearance this morning, the Honorable Linda McCallum signed an arrest warrant for Fernandez Saldana. Our investigation remains active and ongoing, and it has not stopped today with the arrest of Mario Fernandez Saldana. We all remain committed to seeking the truth, and that is the entire truth, and holding accountable every single individual.
5 months after his arrest, on August 16, 2023, Shanna Gardner was arrested at her new home in Washington State for allegedly orchestrating the murder of her ex-husband and the father of 4. During the arrest, police searched her home when one of the children asked an officer, "Are you looking for mommy's burner phone?" The child then informed the officer that his mom keeps all of her important electronics in her bedroom closet, and then whispered, "Up above," pointing towards the ceiling. Investigators seized cell phones, an Apple Watch, SIM cards, and several laptops. More than 100 pages of documents were released in which investigators painted a picture of pure hatred by Shanna Gardner for her ex-husband, Jared Bridegan. Shanna, who was admittedly frustrated by the custody agreements and their differences in parenting choices, couldn't handle fighting with Jared for the next 9 years until the twins reached adulthood. Wiretapped phone calls were recorded between Shanna Gardner and her associates, where Gardner believed she was being tracked and discussed whether FaceTime screens could be recorded, as suggestions were made not to discuss certain things over the phone. The prosecution claims that plans to have Bridegan killed by a hitman began as early as February 2015, 7 years before the hit took place. A friend and former co-worker of Gardner advised investigators in a sworn statement that Shanna mentioned Mario made statements he could get 4 guys to break into Bridegan's home in the middle of the night and take care of him, and nobody would ever know. A Jacksonville Beach police detective, Christopher Johns, testified that there were multiple conversations over several years about Mario killing or finding people who could kill Jared. The prosecution also alleges conversations between Shanna Gardner and her close friend, Kim Jensen, revealed that Gardner said, "I would love to see him get the lethal injection. I'm not even joking. I want him gone." Detective Johns then testified that evidence showed Jensen reach out to contacts on Gardner's behalf, relaying that Shanna needs a guy, asking if they could do magic or find a guy who does a permanent disappearing act, alluding to having Bridegan killed. Within these text messages, code words were revealed such as casserole or funeral potatoes, which were used in reference to the murder. The prosecution alleges that during Jensen's grand jury testimony, she recalled a conversation between herself and Shanna.
And was there a trip to Hawaii in 2022 prior to the murder of Jared Bridegan?
There was a trip to Hawaii approximately a week before the murder.
And did Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez Saldana go on that trip to Hawaii?
They did.
And did they return approximately?
About 4 days before the murder.
So around February 12th, 2022?
Correct.
And did Ms. Jensen describe for you a conversation that Shanna Gardner told her she had with Mario Fernandez Saldana in the week before Jared was killed?
During that time frame, Mario stated to Shanna that Mario was going to, in fact, kill Jared, and that if she didn't want it to happen, she needed to speak up and say it now.
Ms. Jensen told you this, and obviously with the testimony from Henry Tenen, that Mario Fernandez came to him the day of the homicide on February 16th, saying he needed to do this now to save his marriage.
Correct.
The prosecution asserts this evidence further proves that without the instruction, or at the very least, the approval of Shanna Gardner, the conspiracy to murder Jared Bridegan would not have been executed. Additionally, the prosecution states Henry Tenen claims that both Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez Saldana approached him about killing Bridegan, and after being offered $150,000, Tenen agreed. According to Tenen, Mario Fernandez provided the firearm, the ammunition, and drove the truck to Sanctuary Boulevard on the night in question, which contradicted statements made by both Shanna and Mario when they claimed Mario was at home asleep on the couch at the time of the murder. Now, it quickly came to light that Shanna Gardner came from a very, very wealthy family. Her parents are the co-founders of Stampin' Up!, a highly successful multi-level marketing company which would profit hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Her parents created and funded an irrevocable trust for Shanna, for which Mario Fernandez was made the trustee. This trust was established to provide financial resources to Shanna Gardner that would also be protected from litigation with Jared Bridegan. A clause within the trust states that once Shanna Gardner has no more legal entanglements with her ex-husband, Jared Bridegan, she may elect to serve as trustee of her trust and take full control of the assets, which the prosecution alluded to this as evidence of a financial motive to have Bridegan killed. Additionally, bank records revealed thousands of dollars transferred out of Shanna's trust into a business account, First Choice Home Rentals, LLC, which was owned by Shanna and Mario. Checks were then written out of the business account to Henry Tenen that were disguised as investments into Tenen's pallet company. All of the checks written were signed by Mario Fernandez. One check written for $5,000 read, Kickstarter and good luck. Tenen stated that the check was actually the first payment for the homicide. Shanna Gardner and her estranged husband, Mario Fernandez Saldana, have both been charged with first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, conspiracy to commit a capital felony, and child abuse. The state has filed the intention to seek the death penalty for the co-defendants. They have both pleaded not guilty to the charges. While the two will face a joint trial, they are being represented by separate defense teams. Mario Fernandez is represented by a team of attorneys made up of Frank Tassone, Jesse Dreiser, James Hill, and Shannon Day, while Shanna Gardner, with all of her resources, has obtained well-known attorneys such as Ronald Sullivan Jr., Patrick Corrady, and arguably one of the most recognized attorneys in the country, Jose Baez, who successfully won the acquittals in the murder trials of Casey Anthony and Aaron Hernandez. Shanna's defense admits to the text messages, but asserts that they were sent in the midst of a tumultuous divorce from 2015 to 2019 and made in jest, arguing that these text messages should not be admissible due to the time lapsed and frivolity, further maintaining that there is no communication between Shanna and the gunman, therefore asserting that no evidence links Shanna Gardner to the murder of Jared Bridegan. The state disputes this notion with evidence of Shanna Gardner discussing Henry Tenen when he was arrested, but before charges related to Jared Bridegan's murder were announced to the public. Attempts were made by the defense teams to disqualify the state's attorney's office from prosecuting the case, claiming prosecutorial misconduct. In a motion to have the case dismissed, Gardner's attorneys claimed the state knowingly presented false evidence that was material to the court's denial of bond, and that Gardner's due process rights had been violated. The argument said that the state misrepresented the text messages between Gardner and Kim Jensen, and further accused the detective of false testimony.
The allegations that have arisen from the motions filed by the defense are serious, and the remedy that is sought is extraordinary. This court has the authority to disqualify the entire 4th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office. It is a drastic measure, and the higher courts than me have cautioned courts not to use unless it is absolutely necessary. This court has gone through the analysis of both actual prejudice and substantial misconduct. I have poured over the facts that have been offered both through exhibit, evidence, and testimony. Based upon that very thorough review, the court finds that disqualifying the 4th Judicial Circuit is denied.
The two defendants are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Everything in this video is alleged based on public information. The trial is set to begin in October of 2025. May justice prevail for Jared Bridegan and his family and loved ones who tragically and senselessly lost such an important figure in their lives.